Hello, I'm Kimberley Dondo, Digital Content Manager, and welcome to In Conversation With, the podcast series that delves into the world of financial services and brings you face-to-face with some of the most notable figures in the industry. Listen as we discuss topics that are currently facing the industry and hear from visionary CEOs to disruptive innovators as we bring you a diverse array of voices and perspectives. We'll explore the challenges they faced, the lessons they've learned, and the insights they have to share about the ever-evolving landscape of financial services. Hello and welcome to In Conversation With. I'm Kimberley Dondo, and in today's episode, I'm joined by Sam Grice, founder and CEO at Octopus Legacy. Thank you for joining me today, Sam.
Thank you for having me, Kimberley.
So Sam, to start off, can you share the story behind the founding of Octopus Legacy and how personal experiences shaped your vision?
Yeah, sure. So I'm from financial services. I was working there, it was about 2016, and unfortunately lost my mother in a car accident. So I was 27 at the time and went through that process. My dad was a bit distraught, as you can imagine. And so I took the family lead in managing a lot of the post-death financial stuff and legal things. And it was just all a bit overwhelming, a bit chaotic. I didn't really know what to do. And so I actually originally started a company which was called Guardian Angel to come in and help families with the bereavement process. So signpost them, kind of be a guidance through that period of their lives. And then as we've grown as a company, we've realized that a big part of helping people with the loss process is to ensure that people are prepared in advance, because they kind of come hand in hand. And so we've evolved a lot as a company from just bereavement services, but also into estate planning. And then about 18 months ago was acquired by Octopus, and now became Octopus Legacy as part of that to kind of take our brand to the next level.
Yeah. And for a lot of people, discussing death can be really uncomfortable, but I wondered, why do you believe that discussing death and legacy is so important for families and individuals?
Yeah, I think multiple reasons. Firstly, there's just practical benefits. So having these conversations in advance are going to alleviate stresses following the death. And this can be financial, but also things like my family didn't know whether mum wanted to be buried or cremated. She hadn't really discussed it and sat down with us. So we made assumptions, but those decisions all pile up post-death, and you actually suddenly have a mountain of things you have to discuss. And so if you've got those conversations in advance, it really helps. And there's more an emotional aspect, which is what we're really trying to challenge as a company. But if you have these conversations pre-death, you can actually start to get to know your loved ones a lot better and have those legacy conversations. And we actually recently did a study on this, and 86% of people said that having conversations in advance of death have helped them through the grieving process. And I think it's because you hang on to those stories and those memories that you've got from your loved one. And so having these conversations both have a practical but also emotional benefit for families, and they should definitely be thinking about it more and more.
Yeah. And how does Octopus Legacy support people through that bereavement process?
So we kind of split it across both practical and more emotional. So the practical is definitely around probate. So we have a team here that helps with probate, and we view it through more holistic. So we look at other things that families are discussing at that time, and then we use we've got a brand called National Bereavement Service that helps signpost people if they need something like counselling support or trying to find support networks and groups. So we think whilst the legal side of probate is very important, it needs to be more holistic, and that's how we approach families when we're dealing with them through the loss process.
Yeah, I think I like that holistic process, because obviously it's great to have someone to show you, the legal side and what you need to do in terms of probate. But it is really emotional. And I think if you deal with the emotional, you're better set to be able to deal with the financial aspects and all that stuff, because you're in a better headspace, whereas you're potentially likely to put it off if you're just grieving.
Exactly. And what we find is that we try to approach that, which is different to some companies. The price transparency is one thing. So some people with an expected death, they might be less emotional, but a lot of the time that people come to us, they are, I would say, probably in the worst position of their life. They're emotionally distraught and drained. They may have come to us, 2 days after the death, when they actually don't need to do much right then. But so we give them kind of a sounding air. And I think it's important that that we have these conversations and they can come to us, and transparency and pricing is really, really important, because if you're starting to work out, well, how many hours it's going to take, and I'm paying by the hour or a percentage of the estate, and I don't know how much it's worth, whereas we give quoted fixed fee quotes, so it's very clear to understand, and they can at least try to make decisions. And so I think that's really important, as well as to understand that people aren't thinking quite straight when they're going through this process.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there are a lot of common misconceptions when it comes to planning for death and legacy. Could you tell me about some of those?
Yeah, so one of the big ones is planning for death's not about you, which I know sounds a bit odd, but the way we view it is these services aren't for you. It's not your will, it's not your life insurance. These are for your loved ones, and so you won't be there. And so getting them, we get a lot of people, they're saying like, oh, it doesn't matter, I'll just put me in the bin and throw me out, like it doesn't matter, I'm dead. And that's fine, but you've got to understand that decision is going to actually impact your loved ones. And so you are making a selfless act by putting these preparations in place, which is I guess a big misconception, is that these documents are for you. They're actually for your loved ones, which is really important. And that one we get a lot is, I don't have enough wealth, or I don't have enough money to need a plan, because that's just for what wealthy people do, which is also not true. And that's not true for lots of reasons. Is one, a lot of people are over certain tax thresholds without really understanding what inheritance tax is, so it's important for them to have a think about it. And secondly, there's a lot of things you can do in your will, even if you don't have a lot of money. For example, you can gift certain items to people, you can leave messages and memories and things that may mean a lot more to them than financial security going forward. And so there are two things we really break down, is that you don't have to be wealthy to have a will, and you also, it's not for you, it's for your loved ones. So definitely think about it from a selfless point of view.
Mm-hmm. And can you explain the concept of bringing death to life, and what it means for financial planning?
Yeah, so I think bringing death to life is a lot about, as a brand, we're trying to bring more into, similar to what I just mentioned, more into the estate planning process than just finances and legals. And I think what that means is really talking to people about their life, their legacy, and learning about who they are as a person, rather than just their total net worth and where it's going. And I think that's, as people start to talk about their life and their loved ones and their beneficiaries, that brings up conversations like charitable giving. And is there something you want to do following your death that may not be the traditional way? Do you want to support some causes after you're gone? And we believe that these conversations might take longer than the standard 20-minute session you've got with a solicitor. But ultimately, what that means is when that person passes away and passes those assets on, that it's going to mean a lot more to them while they're alive, to have those conversations, and then more importantly after they're gone, with their families.
Yeah. And I imagine that a lot of people, like in terms of consumers, might think, I don't need to think about this until I'm a certain age. So maybe, 50 plus I'm guessing there is no age limit to thinking about this stuff.
No, and it depends on the definition of old is, right? I mean, my mum died at 60, so she thought she had a long ahead of her, and her will wasn't up to date. And actually, her not having an up to date will has continued to cause issues for our family. And I know if mum knew that what the issues it would have caused by not having an up-to-date will, she definitely would have, mum was the most caring person in the world. She definitely would have updated if she knew it caused consequence. So you're never too old. Things can happen as well, accidentally, but also as life events. If you've had a child or bought a home, it's a time to just think about it, because if you've got someone now depending on you, whilst it's unlikely that both parents were to die, the big thing people should be discussing is, well, if that was to happen, who do you want to be the guardian for your children? And it's probably the single most important decision parents could make, is that if you were both gone, who's going to look after them? And if you don't have that down or officiated in will, then it's up to your family or the courts to decide where that child goes and your child goes. And I think when you lay it out like that to young families, it does give them the encouragement to actually start having these conversations today, for sure.
For sure. And what practical steps can advisors take to encourage their clients when discussing legacy planning?
I think definitely to put a will in. I know a lot of advisors talk about will writing or ask clients, do you have a will? But it sometimes comes across more like a tick box exercise for onboarding a new client. And yeah, they've got a will, okay. They're asking more questions like, when did you write that will? Is that will up to date? Is very important. We deal with clients. We actually dealt with one that had written their will last time in 1973. And so a lot has changed since 1973. It was interesting, actually, a lot of he had left 2 legacy gifts, which is donations to charities and as well. And he actually not only doesn't support those charities anymore, he's got a distaste for them.
Wow. So, imagine if he hadn't updated it.
Exactly. So if you had died yesterday, you would have left that money to those charities. And so I think asking them a little bit more than just, do you have a will tick box is important. And what I think some advisors will find is that with a will and the way, especially legacy approaches it, you get a full holistic view of their assets, because they might mention things that they're not mentioned in an advisor conversation, not only their properties, but also where those properties want to go. And whilst you might get access to all that information, you might not. And so a will is a good way to engage them around maybe potentially listing more assets than they've got across. And then one thing we see time and time again, which is probably more worrying, is the amount of people that don't have lasting power of attorney documents in place. And these are super important, both financial and health. And I think it's only 5% of adults have it. And it's a document that I think everyone should have in place, because if you start to lose mental capacity, if you don't have your power of attorneys in place, it becomes very, very hard to start doing that. So those are the documents that I would say that most clients that are your onboarding should definitely have in place and be up to date as well.
Yeah. And you've talked about how Octopus Legacy aims for more of a holistic experience when it comes to planning death and legacy. So could you expand a little bit more and tell me how you differentiate from other services in the bereavement and legacy space?
Yeah, so we're really trying to bring it all together. I guess a one-stop style of approach to estate planning or death planning. What I mean there is you can write your will as power of attorney with legacy, but also life insurance. You can take practical steps around funeral planning, and then we've got legacy products as well. So encouraging people to leave lasting messages or videos or voice notes for their loved ones. And so the way we see it is that if someone's trying to prepare for death, eventually legacy is going to be the brand that they can come and prepare holistically and not have to go around. And why that's a benefit is if you've got a client and you're having to get an estate plan in place, but to speak to 2 or 3 providers to make that happen, what ends up happening is that the customer just loses interest. It's something, going to one professional is one thing, but going to 3 or 4 professionals is another. And so we also, through our Octopus connections, we also work very closely with advisors, because they've already given you a lot of information that we require. And so if you just send them to the solicitor down the road, what can often happen is they have to start the whole onboarding process again, go through all the information that you've already taken from them. And again, it just adds to the friction around it. So we view it both holistically in regards to the products we produce, but also when we're dealing with our partners, getting a holistic view of the clients, that we can save as much time as possible. And we're a digital first company, so that makes it very easy.
Yeah, for sure. And I wonder what the reception has been from clients and advisors since launching Octopus Legacy, or since, moving over and becoming Octopus Legacy.
Yeah, so I think thing definitely comes down to transparent pricing, and I would say fair pricing for what we offer. And what I mean there is there's a lot of in our profession and a lot of professions, there's charged by the hour is quite a common way of billing. Now, the problem with that is if you're sending a client to someone who charges by the hours, you can't really give them an upfront quote on how much they think that's going to cost. And so some advisors don't like that, so they won't send clients down the path, so then planning doesn't happen. So one thing advisors have been very open to is our transparent pricing, both in the estate planning. So, our wills cost $3.99, but right through to probate. So when their clients get sent from an advisor to us to handle the probate, we can give a fixed quote back, which is quite nice for the advisor to know, okay, this is roughly what it's going to cost. Well, this is exactly what it's going to cost, sorry. And this is roughly what it's going to cost. And it could be, within this band. So that's been very supported by the industry, and also communication. So we're a digital first company. So we're very quick to communicate. We deliver our wills between 5 to 7 days, which is incredibly quick compared to the market. And so that means that they don't have to wait months to get these documents in place, and they can, do them efficiently and quick, which means that the client can move on with more financial discussions that the advisor is going to be having with them.
Yeah. And looking ahead, what are your hopes for Octopus Legacy and its impact in society regarding discussions around death? I'm sure, in the Victorian age, the British love talking about death, but it seems we've regressed the other way. We shy away from that. So are you hoping to come in the middle or go back to the Victorian times?
It's very interesting, and there's some cultures are very open about talking about it. I was actually speaking to someone yesterday about there's a festival in Spain called the Day of the Living Dead, and what it is they carry everyone from the town that year that's had a near-death experience, and they carry them in open coffins down the street as a celebration, which I thought was amazing and really lovely. And it's kind of like, yeah,
it's like macabre, but also beautiful at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we have this knee jerk that it is a bit morbid, but actually, if you think about it, that's people that have nearly died and then celebrating life, which I think is, to your point on what do we mean when we're saying bringing death to life. It's that this kind of thing can definitely have, whether we're going to be carrying people down Oxford Street on coffins, probably not. But really, for me, where my passion is and where the company's, I think a lot of people that join us is really around loss. So I'm still trying to build a business that helps people deal with loss. So those 2 to 3 weeks after a death, some of the worst moments you're going to go through, and there should be a brand you can come to where you feel that they're supporting you and they're guiding you and they're not going to rip you off and they're going to be there for you. And for order for us to do that, we need to ensure that a lot of the population have their plans in place. So I see that at the moment, while a lot of our clients are writing their wills, their ultimate customer is their beneficiaries that we're going to deal with in, say, 30 or 40 years, and building up that ecosystem of products. That means that clients don't have to go elsewhere. They can just come to Legacy for support. It's going to be a big part of that long-term growth, and what I'm excited about building as well. Things like house clearance come up a lot. So a lot of our probate customers are actually wanting help with house clearance. Now that would be normally something a solicitor wouldn't discuss with their clients because that's not their job. But actually, house clearance is a big thing for people because their house is full of items. They don't know whether they want to throw them out or not. I think me and my sisters still have a storage unit full of mum's belongings nearly 7 years after she's died. And, we're paying for that every year, probably because of the emotional attachment. But, there's no company that's guided us through that journey. And so I think that's where we can really shine as a brand, is saying, well, actually, this is a human problem, so we're going to help you with it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm probably gonna, once we're done, I'm gonna be sending some very weird text messages to all my family and friends, and they're going to think I'm planning and plotting something. Yes. But I'm actually just concerned about them and being like, have you thought about this? Especially my friends who do have young families. I don't know if they've thought about that, or even my friends who just purchased a home with their partner. I don't think most people think about that. They just get the life insurance because they have to. And then after that, they don't really think, because no one thinks it's going to happen to them in their 30s. So, yeah.
No. And I think it's a matter of I'm the person that speaks about death at parties all the time. So I'm really used to it. But I was having a conversation with someone I know quite well, and his dad was diagnosed with quite aggressive terminal cancer. And he was going off to America, and he was getting real nervous about it because he didn't want to leave his dad, but he had to do it. And I said to him, like, before you go, make sure you sit down with your dad and film a conversation, like you two talking, just do it. And he was like, it's a bit weird, And I was like, just do it, trust me. And unfortunately, his dad died when he was in America. And he said that video now is like literally the most valuable thing he's got in his possession. And he's so glad he did it. And I think that's how you can, those conversations don't need to be morbid. And I think a lot of people should be having them at all ages, because something could happen today on the way home. You never know. And so it doesn't have to be morbid. It can be actually quite lovely. So,
yeah, I think that's why I've also gotten into the habit of taking so many photos just because I'm like, I want to remember every moment. I want to remember how all my loved ones' faces looked, and filming random videos so I can look back and have a giggle.
Well, I think
especially when you're grieving.
Exactly. And I think we did a study, I can share all the results, but I think it's something like 25% of people miss the laugh of their loved one. And if you think about it, you actually have their laugh, it's quite a hard thing to track down, but the laugh encompasses so much about that person. And having that on either video or voice is just such a valuable thing you can do. And that's not typically linked to a will, but it should be. And that's what we're trying to build. So I think it's nice.
Yeah, that's really great. Well, thank you for this conversation, Sam. I think it was really deep and insightful. So thank you for speaking with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to In Conversation With. We do hope that you enjoyed it. Please do keep up to date with all our new releases via Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else you get your podcasts from. You can also keep up to date with all our new content published on the Money Marketing website, as well as our print edition Money Marketing magazine. So make sure to subscribe. Follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. See you next time.